today.
Yeah, classroom conversations. So we're beginning this half hour talking about the cost of education, and not just the cost to the taxpayers, but we're talking about really the dollars and cents that come out of the wallets of parents and teachers themselves, because a lot of parents and teachers are having to fund a lot of what their students are doing in the classroom. So
I was amazed at some of the things that teachers are paying for. Parents are fundraising through PACs.
Right.
They're paying for technology equipment, sometimes basic school supplies. So we're talking paper, pens, pencils, things like that, above and beyond the supplies that we already buy at the beginning of the year. Projectors, giving teachers budgets for classroom supplies. Books was a huge one. Parents are buying books for the schools. Books are not being provided in the budget.
These are textbooks, you mean? Or
textbooks and reading books, library books, books for the classroom for kids to read. Playgrounds was another huge one. And the list just goes on and on. There was one I read this morning. They were, the PAC fundraised to build risers in their washrooms for the little kids so they could reach the taps.
Oh, wow.
You know, just basic stuff like that.
Think about,
Yeah.
You know, so there's this huge pressure being put on parents to fund the system, and it shouldn't have to be that way for basic educational supplies. I mean, all kids should have equal access to these basic needs that you know, basic supplies that we need to fund to make the system work.
There has always been fundraising throughout history, but now for things not like textbooks.
I mean, I've never heard about it for textbooks.
Yeah, this is more like trips to somewhere. Or
Harman, how much are you paying as a teacher? I mean, do you have to pay for things as well as a teacher?
Yeah, that's the thing. Teachers, they pay out of pocket for their classroom supplies. Those are the tools of the trade. You know, when you walk into a classroom, you know, it doesn't come fully furnished, believe it or not. You know, you have to buy those posters on the wall and the books for your bookshelves. You know, create a classroom library. It costs money. The average teacher, they say, spends about $700 to $800 per year out of their own pocket, which is not tax deductible like other professions.
Harman, the other thing is that you mentioned that there's a lot of schools here in the Lower Mainland that parents can't afford to try and do that as well, and the fundraising is very difficult for them.
Exactly.
And is that a case where you would see a sponsorship coming in to help out?
Yeah, well, the thing is, we want equity in the system. We want kids to have access to, you know, all the very best, no matter where they live in the city, no matter their socioeconomic status. So, you know, we don't want to create have and have-not schools. You can't fund the public education system based on, you know, economic downturns and upswings, right? Education should be recession-proof. Healthcare should be recession-proof. Safety and law enforcement should be recession-proof.
Right. But unfortunately, it's not. That's the problem. That's where we find ourselves.
Well, I mean, the reality is that while we have a difference of opinion on class size, you know, we have some pretty good class sizes in this province, and I know there are teachers that might disagree with that. I get a lot of tweets, but in reality, we have less than 2% of classes in the province, particularly in high school, that are over 30.
We've got over 16,000 classes in British Columbia now that have 4 or more students with special needs who are on individual education plans, and there are a number of other students in classes that need that individual support, and that's what part of this bargain is about. That needs to be addressed by this government. But we need some significant proposal from government with actual dollars attached that they're going to address the issues of smaller class sizes for our students come September, and address the issue of dealing with the class composition issues.
The research that I've seen from around the world, the OECD, experts from a lot of other countries say that class size in and of itself is not a determinant of quality outputs.
As you reduce class size, what you do is you create opportunities for teachers to teach and reteach or adapt their teaching to meet different learning styles or to meet the particular needs that students in their class have.
Is there a magic formula? Is there a magic number?
Well, there's not a magic number, but there is the evidence shows from the research that there's some pretty strong policy implications that generally anytime class size increases, you're going to have a decrease in educational attainment. Reducing class sizes has a big impact on educational attainment as well as life outcomes for students. So it's not just about test scores, but it also includes a big impact, positive impact on high school graduation rates, going to college college and university completion, etc. But it has these life outcome impacts that are really important too. For example, there's a strong association between lower class size and reduced juvenile criminal behavior, reduced teen pregnancies, higher rates of marriage, better savings behavior, etc.
Well, I'm interested in the research because the education minister said, 8 minutes ago that he's got research that says just the opposite of what you just said.
Well, I think from 1978 to today,
you should send him your books.
There's probably one thing that we can say for sure based on the empirical evidence, that all things else, everything else equal, class size is the most important policy decisions that governments can make to increase educational attainment. Now, Minister Fassbender is talking about some of the research that he's seen from OECD. I don't know exactly what he's referring to, but OECD, the Organization for Economic Development and Cooperation, they have, in a paper last year, said that there were two big educational reform principles that OECD countries have enacted in the last decade. One is reduce class size. The other is increasing teacher salaries. So that's the pattern of the policy, and it holds with the pattern of evidence from research on class size.
I will say this, is we are there in good faith. We've made significant movement.
Well, I think what you have here is the results of the court case and a decade of difficulty in bargaining and bargaining according to the courts in bad faith.
We have to remember that we've had a recent Supreme Court decision in January that stated that this government bargained with us in bad faith in the last round of bargaining for their own political gain. And the Supreme Court restored our provisions, which are our working conditions and our students' learning conditions, back into our collective agreements. So for us, we need this government to honor for the second time a Supreme Court decision, despite their right to appeal. And so far at the bargaining table, this government has not put $1 on the table to address smaller class sizes for our students.
It doesn't go far enough, and they're still seeing a number of special needs kids in classes, and that some parents on one side say it's important that those kids are in the classes, which they are. I think it's an amazing thing. We were when I was in school, we were one of the first schools to have kids like that in our class, and everyone takes ownership of them. But the fact is that there are kids that are there that are trying to learn as well, and by not having the proper staff there, according to the TF, it makes it a troubling situation inside of a classroom.
So let me say this: it's a really complicated issue.
Right.
There is no question we need to work together to deal with composition of classrooms for the future.
I have to ask, we're right out of time, but I really have to ask this, because this has gone through the courts twice now, and it's you're waiting an appeal. I think, is it next year that
not sure
it could
when
happen?
it'll be resolved.
Are we not just delaying the inevitable?
No, I don't believe so, because I think the reason we're appealing is we have some fundamental disagreements on point of law. But you know what? We want to negotiate a settlement. We want to solve this dispute. We don't want children and parents caught in the middle in communities. The only way to do it is to sit at the table.
As a student, where do you come at that issue?
Yeah, as a student, it's really easy to get behind this from the teachers because class sizes and composition are really important in schools. Like I'm in grade 11, so I'm in high school, but I've been here going to school in Vancouver for most of my life. And even in elementary school, I went to a special program. I was really lucky to go to this special program, as you were talking about, for gifted kids, and it allowed me to be in a smaller class because of that program. So I was in a class of almost 20, less than 20 at some points, and that was amazing because we got so much one-on-one time with our teacher. And those 4 years of my educational career was probably some of the most foundational years of my educational time in school.
We've just come off 2 years of legislated zero. In effect, what government is offering us is another 2 years of zero, which would make it 4 years. And that's not comparable to any agreements out there with any other public sector employee group. So we need government to actually move on wages, and we're absolutely willing, and we will be moving on wages too.
economically, it isn't possible to get all the issues solved at once. So how do you move forward and pick issues that are important now and then continue over the next 5 to 10 years of trying to sort of fix education?
Well, I think that the question of whether it's affordable for the public is not completely clear. We've been persuaded as taxpayers that we want the same level or increased level of service, but at the same level of taxation. Well, something's wrong with that. If you want the same or you want more, you're going to have to pay a little bit more to account for inflation. So I'm not convinced that, in fact, we can't afford more.